Good day, everyone. You're back on An Attempt to Understand with me, Adam Dean. Thank you very much for joining me today. So, in today's episode, we are discussing the comparison between physical media and digital media. Now, a comparison might not be the right word, to be perfectly honest. That was kind of my intention when I originally set out to, write about this and think about this. But it really more just morphed into a monologue of me complaining and worrying about the growing world of digital media. Okay. So if that sounds interesting, make sure to stick around. Okay, so let's jump into it then. I think, like everyone else, several years ago, everyone just got into the idea of everything being online, of everything being like a digital landscape. It was like it's much easier, it's minimal, it's efficient. You can have all of your content on, accessible just through your TV or an Apple TV or console, and there is such less issue in most cases, like with finding something. Well, a quick example, to the other end. I mean, I remember 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later is the zombie film, Cillian Murphy and stuff, and it had no online presence. You had to find the DVD of it, and I think my partner and I must have searched for like a year, pretty much, just not like hunting, like your man looking for Twinkies in Zombieland, but anytime we're in a charity shop or anytime we're out and about, just having a wee look for it. And eventually we did find it, watched it. Fantastic film. Certainly was a trip to revisit it. But yeah, it was a fun pursuit to find that, But now with the new film, they've put everything online, sort of the rights issues out and all that, so it doesn't really exist that same kind of demand anymore. But the point still stands. Like I said, several years ago, when I was really just I felt like everything was just digital media, especially the PS5. When I bought the PS5 right on release, I excuse me, I bought the digital only copy. That's like the just the one that was available on the web page when I got there. So I was like, yes, snap it up. And I guess that was kind of a big point of being, of making that decision and saying, okay, I'm stepping away from kind of collecting physical media. So I got rid of a crap ton of stuff. I got rid of a bunch of DVDs. I got rid of box sets. I think I had the whole like US Office set on DVD. It was flipping like this wide, honestly. And I got rid of so much stuff and just gave it away for like basically pennies. Now, again, to be fair, it was taking up a lot of space. I don't have a lot of space. This is a small little flat. So it there were definitely benefits to getting rid of it, but let's move on from the initial enthusiasm that surrounded digital media as we got into it, and stuff changed from it taking 30 hours to download Underworld from the PlayStation Store on a rental to everyone paying for everything now. And everyone really does pay for everything, in terms of subscriptions and yearly costs. Everything just keeps getting more expensive, and they all line up with each other. Like Disney Plus and their annual subscription, and they've kind of followed suit like Prime, and they're like, okay, we're gonna put ads in to like the bottom tier, and we're gonna strip benefits away from like the premium and make a premium tier, and everything is just an ever growing ladder. It's like there's a good clip of a guy speaking on Apple. It's that phone guy, MKB or something like that. The dude that was like pulling a 90 in a school zone. Um, him. There's a good clip of him explaining like the ladder of purchase with Apple. If you go in, you're like on a new iPhone, and you pick up and a base I don't know what they're on now, like a 16 or something. You pick up a 16, and they're like, oh well, the 16 is good, yeah, it's a good phone, 100%. But the 16 Pro has a slightly better specs here, slightly better camera there, and it's like, okay, well maybe I'll get the Pro. It's only like 100 and whatever more, and they're like, yeah, 100%. Well, if you're that guy, if you want the best, you can get the 16 Pro Max, and that has everything. That doesn't just have a couple extra things; it has everything on it. And you're like, oh my goodness, sign me up. And then by the time you're with the 16 Pro Max and you're at the register, now you're being sold on the iCloud, extra storage for a yearly fee. Now you're being sold on an insurance, which sounds much more convincing than the insurance would have been before because you're spending X amount more money on it. So it makes sense to try to protect it. I feel that's really happened with these services. I mean, Netflix back in the day, you used to just order a DVD in the post. You get it, have it for whatever time you wanted, and then you would send it back to them. And it was just one, two, three. It was simple. But now everything is anything but simple, isn't it? It's really not economically sustainable for the average person. Um, Again, you get memes about everything coming around and being full circle. About back in the day, everyone's paying for like cable TV, or in the UK, we probably said like Sky TV. They're like a massive TV provider, and you would pay for Sky, and Sky even themselves, they chopped up all of the services into like a million other services. So you have to get like the base package, but then you have to pay for the kids stuff, and you have to pay for the sports stuff, and you have to pay for all this. And then these streaming services came along, and it's like, hold on, this is different. They have a collection of classic films or a collection of good stuff that's there, and then they're starting to make their own pretty high quality original content. And it was really inviting at first, but when you look at multiple services that are you know over 10 quid a month, like £100+ a year, and when they start stacking up on each other, especially again in the UK, we have a whole TV license situation. So you pay every year. You're like auto enrolled in to pay for the right to watch TV, and the money goes in large part to BBC to fund like nationalised television. Which I think in one hand is purposeful, or is important in that a country should hold a national identity in terms of having media, especially the UK. It's like in top three exports in it. But honestly, then you get into bigger issues. Luckily you can pull yourself out of the TV license within the UK, but if you like misstep 1 degree and put the wrong email in when you're doing it, you're gonna get a barrage of letters at your door, like honestly. So um, what I really want to talk about, and I think is really the nutshell of this topic, is the control, is the fact that we don't own digital content. When we pay like Netflix every month and we get access to their library of content, like that's understandable. It's understandable that I don't own any Netflix stuff. You know what I mean? Because I just pay a license to get me in the door and let me, peruse everything and then leave. But digital media has really taken it a step further in that you don't own the stuff that you even purchase digitally. Back in the day, Amazon removed the Kindle version of like 1984. I think a version of Animal Farm as well, and they removed that like from people's devices who had actually purchased the book. And they had to do it because the third party that had uploaded like the files for those books originally didn't actually hold like the legal right to do so. And because they didn't hold the legal right, Amazon had to remove them from everyone's devices. Now, like, to be perfectly fair, it was a good while ago. I think Amazon did credit the people, like the value of whatever that book is worth to their account, but it is still a prominent stand that you don't own your stuff. When you buy something digitally, you are leaning on the shoulder of several other things continuing for you to be able to access that for the future. You are leaning on the fact that a third party didn't incorrectly or illegally upload the content to the server, which how does that even happen? You know what I mean? But you're also leaning on the fact that Amazon are going to retain the right to that, because if you own something in your library, let's say, the TV show Grimm. Grimm is a fantastic TV show about a man who sees like creatures. There's like mythical people and kind of monster people and stuff like that, and they're like an animal race, and he has the ability to see these people through when they don't want to be seen, and that's what makes it Grimm. And it follows his adventures in that line. So if I own Grimm on Amazon, all 5 seasons of it, and then Amazon lose the right to distribute Grimm, even in just my area of the world, because some deal lapsed for the 10-year period of the contract, and Amazon are like, well, nobody really watches Grimm, we don't really care. We want to put the money into the new Reacher show or the Accountant 3 or whatever, then then I'm not going to have it. When I go on there, it's simply going to disappear from my library. If they don't have the rights to show it, then they no longer hold the legal rights to license me it. And that's all I'm ever doing is like holding a temporary license. You're never properly holding something in your hand. You're never holding something in your hand like all these Blu-rays and CDs and books and stuff back here. It's not like that at all. No matter what the actual detail is of the situation. Again, apart from just control itself, control kind of very much overlaps with the censorship of information. Things get very heavily censored, especially now. And I'm not here to make a whole social speech about the world being woke, which isn't even a thing, to be perfectly honest. So I'm sure just from that you can tell what side of the fence I sit on. But so much stuff is censored now. So let's talk about the biggest example. I would say the biggest example right now that comes to my mind is South Park. South Park has been, for the past like 5 years or so, had a new home on Paramount Plus. And they've had several specials and stuff like that on the Paramount service. But now they're pulling over the full back catalogue of the South Park episodes to put them onto Paramount. And Paramount have picked out about 17 episodes that they say just like cross the line or, for some reason do not hit a mark of appropriateness. So they've decided that they're going to take them out. The episodes that they were taken out, I mean, like they're offensive. They were funny, and I guess they're offensive. But I mean, South Park offends everyone. You know what I mean? Like they go at pretty much everyone equally. But let's look at one example. Okay, let's look at Trapped in the Closet. Trapped in the Closet is an episode of South Park in which Stan is mistaken by the Church of Scientology as the second coming of their founder, L. Ron Hubbard, the science fiction author. Stan is depressed at the start of the episode, and he encounters the Church of Scientology. They give him like this test where you hold wee sticks, and then they just start freaking out about like the whatever Scientology's equivalent of midichlorians is, from Star Wars, like the midichlorians in your blood. I've just rewatched the prequel series, so it's fresh in my head. But yeah, whatever the sciencey stuff that they track is, they're like, oh my god, he has a million billion of it. He must be L. Ron Hubbard. Come back. So they give Stan a whole bunch of confidence and purpose and drive, and then he goes off and he starts like writing down a whole new chapter of like the book. He starts making like the new Bible, and you see all the top board members. They're like, "Oh, this is brilliant! Oh, this is amazing!" And then, as the episode progresses, it's called Trapped in the Closet because Tom Cruise literally goes into a closet and refuses to come out. And you go through a series of celebrities like his ex-partners, and I think R. Kelly shows up at one point, and he's doing his whole "Trapped in the Closet" song that they're like parodying his famous music video where it's like all one take, one story. But anyway, the point of me bringing this up was that towards the end of the episode, Stan, first of all, he's like, guys, I've wrote a whole bunch of stuff about how our members no longer have to pay us money and how we're going to support them with all of these different schemes. And then the board member turns around, he's like, what are you, a fucking idiot? Like, do you not see what you're doing here? You don't surely believe you're actually L. Ron Hubbard come here to do this, do you? Like, it's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. What are you talking about? Um, and the episode ends with Stan claiming, allegedly, that the Church of Scientology is a scam based, based or founded by, L. Ron Hubbard, and it essentially preys on vulnerable people like depressed Stan at the start of the episode, gives them a sense of confidence and purpose and drive, and then manipulates them into becoming a sole, value point for the church and just being another rung on the ladder and being another directive to get more people in. And when Stan says all of this stuff and he says it's a big scam, Tom Cruise comes flying out the closet along with everyone else that accompanied him. And they're all like, oh, we're going to sue you. We're going to sue you for this. This is horrible. How can you do this? We're going to sue you. And that's a very, again, famous aspect of the Church of Scientology, is that they're pretty quick to trigger lawsuits against people. And then Stan ends up looking like deadpan straight to camera. And he's like, go on, sue me. I'm not scared. Well, like the background of this episode. Okay, this episode originally premiered, and then it was meant to premiere again. I believe it was in March the following year. It was going to be rerun, and Tom Cruise at the time, he was so livid at the episode because it obviously brought up his history of Scientology. And again, for just to say for the context, because I know everyone looks at Scientology now and thinks that's just some batshit crazy stuff like Xenu, what? But again, back in the day, and you'll see this if you look into people talk about the perception of Tom Cruise and his fame, and people really didn't know what it was about. People just thought it was like a collective of guys or a collective of people, and yeah, they followed some doctrine or something, but it was essentially like a wellness group, or like a self help group or something like that. It wasn't looked at as anything per, um, but this episode obviously came out. It was claiming all these types of things against Scientology, and Tom Cruise allegedly said to the head of Paramount and Comedy Central at the time that he would not fulfill his marketing obligations for Mission Impossible 3, I believe it was at the time, if they allowed that show to be rerun. And they pulled it. They didn't let it. They switched it out for a different episode, which was more primarily focused on Chef. Chef is a supporting character in South Park, and again, famously, the actor who portrayed Chef is a member of the Church of Scientology, and because of that Trapped in the Closet episode, he stepped away from the show, out of what do you say, like a strike of solidarity with his cult, essentially. So I wanted to talk about that so much because that is a clear representation of a powerful figure within the entertainment industry using his connections and power to silence the art that tells people about a aggressive, controlling cult. Like, you literally, if you go on to your horrible social media platform of choice, you'll see many, many videos of people outside the Scientology building, like trying to film indoors, being like, "Oh, look, there they are. Don't go in there, man. Don't go in there. They're coaxing you. They're coaxing you." So it's like so evident now, but at a time when the cultural perception was not there that this thing is something that could take control and actually like ruin your life, when that just wasn't an idea, this superstar used all of his power and fame to withhold that warning of, and he censored that art, and I just think that's horrendous. Like, I mean, I like the guy's movies and stuff, but flip me, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously he's done many other worse things, I'm sure, for the church than just pulling a South Park episode. Like, I mean, he stands up there and accepts awards and donates millions of dollars to them for tax relief, doesn't he? Pretty sure he had his marriage set up through them, like the Deep type shit. But that's allegedly. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right. Again, before we move on from censorship, just quickly, there is concern of original works being edited. So again, probably kind of a good example, I guess, would be like you can see like the Gen Z or the millennial Harry Potter books that came out, and that's kind of a funny version, the side of it, where they've just replaced like the terms with more we say like recent slang or colloquialisms or something, so they've just kind of edited the book to be in a different tongue a little bit, which again is just more of a funny thing than anything else, more of a spoof thing. But as time goes on and we progress away from having a lot of physical stuff and it's all digital, there will be no trace of the original work. Like, you cannot tell if you download a book that they have changed the wording or the outlines, or they've changed details within the book itself. Like, if you just own it digitally, unless you have a really solid memory of reading that work before, I could recommend you something, you go pick it up and read it, and you have a different takeaway because they've edited that version of it, because they own the rights to it, they own the distribution to it, they own everything, And it's just really concerning about how stuff is media is being, like reshaped to kind of to suit like cultural or political trends, especially I talk a lot about AI and the scariness of AI, but AI could really just frame whatever it wants to in whatever way. It's inaccurate like a good amount of the time. It definitely has its uses, but it's really scary at the end of the day. Okay. Again, moving on, I want to speak about the ownership of your data and the kind of wavering loss of artistic integrity. So streaming platforms are kind of two things. They own two things. They produce the content and they own the content, but they also have all of the attention data. They hold all of the metrics to know what you like and how long you've liked it for, and what you don't like, and what you've hovered over and you considered to watch versus what you were like instantly set to remind me, and all that stuff. And this ability to view all of that data, not like, look, I'm not even going to speak about the fact that Netflix don't have to tell the entertainment industry how successful a project was or wasn't, and then the stars of that project who have in the contract deals for like back end compensation aren't really able to push back and try to get an accurate view of what they're owed, because Netflix doesn't owe anyone the right to tell them how well their film performed. Which I feel like there might have been developments within that in terms of passing laws. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm not even speaking to that. What I'm really speaking to is the fact that having this data essentially gives them a disproportionate power to shape future content based on engagement analytics and not artistic merit. So, one, you're already seeing this through the disappearance of handing a big name director a blank check to make a money, to make a film. Like, look at The Irishman on Netflix. The Irishman is like what, like 3.5 hours long, and like it's fantastic. It is fantastic, but Netflix are not going to do that again. Look at Francis Ford Coppola's, what was his latest film? Megalopolis. Megalopolis is such a funny name. See if that's not the name, that is like a twat, but I think it is. I mean, he had to fund that himself. He sold like his vineyard or something, to fund it, and then it bombed everywhere. Um, the the guts just aren't there, like to give artists money to make these big sprawling projects of like passion. What the money is there for now is to continue trying to multiply the shows that occupy the most airtime, you know, which in many parts is again still not artistically uh, aspirational shows. It's not Squid Game. Now Squid Game was a tremendous success, an example, but it is very much like the 1 in 100 of the shows performance wise on Netflix. I mean, I'm pretty sure Netflix announced that it takes like 20 months or something like that for a show to earn out on average on their service. But really, that means that we're going to continually receive more and more comfort TV. And I like comfort TV. I like putting the US Office on and zoning out like anyone else does, you know what I mean? But when the highest performing media pieces on these platforms over and over again is just whatever a person is putting on because they're so mentally exhausted they don't want to focus on anything, or that they have kids there and they're so preoccupied or exhausted that they just want to put something on it that's entertaining for their kids. Like, it just means we're going to get an incredible amount of really passive stuff like Emily in Paris and like I know Bluey is a sensation. People love Bluey. I know adults watch Bluey and everything. If anyone doesn't know, Bluey is Australian or is it from New Zealand? It's one of the two. It's either from Australia or New Zealand, and it's about a dog called Bluey and his family, and it teaches kids and adults too, I guess, life lessons and such. But I think it really is meant to speak quite highly on um, topics that aren't touched on too much, like neurodivergency and stuff like that. So we're just going to continually get content that's produced for the background. We're going to continue over and over get content that is just made not made with any spirit. And look, I'm not saying that the people working on them are untalented. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to exist. I am simply voicing a concern that when the media powers that control all of the data, they know what people want, they own the production wing to produce what they want. I'm just worried that we're going to continually have subpar content produced over and over and over again just because it's a measure of filling people's time, you know? Um, and then going on to finally, we'll start to wrap up after this one, people, you're nearly there, is the cultural and artistic consequences. Again, this is really carrying on from that last point, but it's the fear that algorithmically driven media will reduce the quality and diversity of our storytelling. The more that we make something for everyone, the less that we make a really great thing for a set amount of people. And that's really sad. Real art, I do think gets lost in a lot of the attentional metrics, and I do think the passive kind of background story is really gaining too much value in the corporation's eyes. So again, to balance this stuff out, let's talk about physical media for 2 seconds. Again, this whole thing, that's why I started off by saying it's meant to be a comparison, but it's really not a comparison. It's just me worrying about digital media for like half an hour. So, with physical media, it helps preserve cultural and artistic works in the original form. I mean, you can obviously go all the way back into history. I've done a previous episode on our connection to history and stuff like that. But it's so important when we look back at history in terms of what had permanent record, like when they actually started recording stuff properly and reliably. We need to be able to look back at stuff for reference material. I collect like a lot of reference books for being a writer, and to be honest, a good amount of the fun is just collecting them, just owning a big Reader's Digest book that tells me about frogs and such. I just find it interesting, and to be honest, I would honestly rather have the joy of referencing something physically in a big book and finding out something and being like, yes, yes, and then going and putting that into my work. And then in the revision or the editorial stage, having to fact check that or edit the nuances of it because whatever I'm working with is slightly outdated. Like I would honestly rather do that because that's keeping the pace at least. At least I'm like, I need this information. I get this information. I put it in and I move on. If I need to know something about frogs and I Google it, man, the first thing I'm going to get is like an AI summary of the first two articles, and it's going to tell me something about frogs. It might not tell me what I need to know. It might. I don't know. I can't really trust it. Then I'll get the next couple things are like sponsored stuff by Frogs R Us, and then you get into an article, but then it'll bring up like a Reddit post from 9 years ago about someone asking the question for frogs. So it's like that's not really the best place for me to get my answer. Like it may have the answer, the person that asked on Reddit 9 years ago, but I am just going off of the faith that whoever answered them near a decade ago was correct. It's not in a journal or an article or it's not from a reputable source. And I mean, I fear people just don't even know what reputable sources are now. We learned a lot in history, especially learn around the Second World War, about biases, about the reliability of different sources and everything. And I just fear, as everyone's driven now to just go Control C, Control V, Chat GPT, work it out, do the answers, I just fear that we're honestly losing, if you're not going to say skills, at least losing like a level of friction, in terms of finding proper information, or in terms of pushing back when something seems wrong. Honestly, it's just scary, because digital search is just so manipulated and so inaccurate, and just whatever someone else wants you to see is what you'll see, whether it's an AI summary or an ad or a certain article pushing you in a direction. I mean, it's like that Grounded app, the Grounded Media app. They do an overview of news articles, and they tell you like if the article is kind of leaning to the right side politically or the left side, or what the historical relevance of that publication is within the political um, atmosphere. So there's such value, I think personally, in still holding old reference material and still holding the art that we keep close. It is honestly just so important for cultural preservation, autonomy, for resistance against the overreach by these digital platforms. You know, um, and I think if we want to retain the control and elements of artistic integrity and ownership over our work, we need to prioritize ensuring the physical media is continued. I mean, and again, I'll end after this, but the latest Borderlands game, Borderlands is an action video game. Borderlands 4, the Ultimate Edition does not even come with the game. Like it's like £150 or something, and it comes with a little statue of a robot and some art and a necklace, and it doesn't come with the game. What's that? What is that when it's at home? You know what I mean? And it's kind of a trend of like games having a collector's edition, which only includes like the digital version of the game. Which I'm gonna be honest, I honestly thought that would be the underdog of the fight. I thought we'd always continue to get like the physical game with a collector's edition, and then never get a digital version. You'd always just have to rebuy or something. But honestly, they've flipped it, that every collector's edition comes with a code and not a physical, reminder of the game to put on the shelf. And it's just sad. It's just damn sad. So, like again, people, that's pretty much my thoughts. It's a bit of an ongoing conversation. This wasn't super structured. This was more of just a dialogue that I wanted to have. If you want something that is maybe a little more put together, a little more collected, go ahead and definitely check out the article that was the basis of this podcast episode. It's called "Digital Media Stole My Mum's Car," and it's on the Attempt to Understand Substack, of course. Um, yeah, like that's pretty much going to do us for today. Again, thank you for listening and checking us out and everything. Obviously, yeah, check out the An Attempt to Understand Substack. And I recently made a Blue Sky account, Adam Dean, at B Sky or whatever it is. So yeah, if you feel inclined to follow there and check out more work, then thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I hope you do enjoy and get some value out of it. Otherwise, if you're a returning viewer, then thank you so much. Your support honestly just means everything to me, and yeah, truly thank you. Right, yes, I gotta get on with my day. You gotta get on with your day. So thank you very much. I will speak to you later, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye bye.